Hi, so we're here. We've printed out, so Copilot's told us to copy and paste this in here. We've done that. We're in Python just to double check, look at the arrows. Now we're like, we don't know if this is what Copilot is expecting. So the thing to do is I'm just going to copy and paste everything and put it back into Copilot. And I'm going to change think to think deeper, because think deeper, it analyzes more and it just basically produces a better quality output. Quick response, basically, if you think about quick response, is basically, let's think about it as an employee who has fast answers, but then they don't think about everything. And sometimes, if not a lot of times, the answers are typically wrong because they've only factored in few things or considered few variables and they haven't really thought it through. So we want think deeper because it thinks it through and it gives you a better quality answer, which is what you need. So I'm just going to copy and paste that into here. As you can see, it's thinking. So it's finally giving us some next steps for what we should do. It hasn't told us what it thinks the problem is, but it has told us what we should do. So make sure you're still in the Python environment. As you can see, it says Python there. So yes, basically this is print the API key your code actually sees. So it's printed that. And then we need to now confirm we're using the genuine SDK client. I'm not entirely sure what the SDK client means, but okay, so it's printed SendGrid API client module SendGrid.SendGrid. So I think that should be correct. I'm not going to bother giving it back to Copilot because then it's going to tell me the instructions all over again. Import the mail builder and show its origin. So again, copy, make sure you're in Python. Correct. SendGrid helpers.mail.mail. So just might be smart here and just copy and paste the most recent output to make sure it's correct, because sometimes just a very tiny detail that's incorrect, and because you don't have any experience coding, you don't know. So always best to just give its output back. So now, so it already looks like there's actually an error. So it's giving the same. So it's just basically saying to just jump and send. So this is jump and send this email. Some of the stuff in this code is stuff that we've already set up before, including the from email, which I'll show you, which is covered in the SendGrid setup video. Okay, let's copy. What site packages? So I'm gonna just remember where this ended. So that's print 4. Okay, so it doesn't seem that you even get to print 4. Let's just copy and paste this entire output. Basically, it's just what it prints. This is the way that the computer refers to it. Copy everything it printed and put it back into... So this issue has been recurring. So I think Copilot is also trying to figure out, it's trying to go through a process of elimination. Sometimes this happens where you hit a wall and it's the same wall and everything it's telling you to do doesn't work. So it can be very frustrating. This is one of these issues. The more complex the task, the more likely it's going to hit this wall. So this is something that you need to be prepared for. And often after a while, you need to find a different way to prompt it to think differently, because it's tried everything. And sometimes it's just telling you to do the same thing over and over again. And you have to tell it, okay, what could the issues be? What have we done? What have we not done? So that's what we've just done before we started this session. So now it's asked us to do to send this code, which looks similar to the previous code. I mean, you're having to print the key again. It's sending the same test. I think this time it's asking it to tell us what the error is. Let's try that. Just copy and paste. Sometimes it doesn't always print immediately. Sometimes it's thinking, or sometimes Bash is slow. Sometimes it's because of these two different things. Sometimes it's actually hard to tell what's wrong. If it's slow, or if it's not printing because this is an error, or if it's just thinking and it is going to print. So you just have to be a bit patient. Sometimes I do press enter again to see if it makes it print something. Oh, it has made it print something. Okay, so here we go. This is a lot of information. So I'm going to copy all of this and put it into Copilot. Just make sure it sends everything. Look at the last, perfect. Sometimes I put the error in a notepad file and then upload it. But there's been times when it's had problems reading it. So sometimes I just copy and paste it just so that there's no issue with Copilot reading the file. So now it's looking at the error and it's thinking. So let's see if Copilot has an answer. Okay, so hopefully so it's basically saying we're calling the wrong endpoint, is how I understand this. So endpoint is basically, with APIs, they talk to each other, so there's a lot of communicating in programming, it seems. So basically, the endpoint, you have to think about it like I think someone described it as an item on the menu. So you call that endpoint and then they provide the specific food that you want based on what you picked. So that's how I've heard someone describe it. That wasn't the best description for me. So I think about it like a phone. So you get on the phone, which is basically an environment. So a bit like Bash. You choose which country you want to make the dial, Clearly, these are not choices that we make now, but obviously subconsciously, you're making that choice because you're not calling an international number, you're calling a UK number, someone who lives in the UK or the US, depending on where you are. You're going to speak English, so you know what language you're going to speak. And then the next thing you need is their number, which I would say is the endpoint, right? Because when you know the right number, you know who you're going to speak to. So it's saying that we're calling the wrong endpoint. So we're not getting the right information because we're calling the wrong person. So let's copy and paste whatever it's asked us to copy and paste. Maybe we didn't copy it. So always make sure that that's bread, because that will then, just make sure that's the right 300. Yes, and then enter. So we've gotten a response body there. We didn't get a Okay, so it's printed saying we have the wrong credentials. I'm going to send that back and not actually look at the next step, because sometimes it gives you next steps not knowing. It usually gives you the next steps not knowing what your output is. So sometimes the next step is not relevant, or you have to eventually fix the step one before you actually move to the next step. So it's thinking. So let's see if we have. So this seems to be a recurring thing where it wants to confirm. It seems to be wanting to confirm the key a lot every time I've done this before, which is okay, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the key, but let's do it anyway. So let's copy this in. I haven't ever copied this in. I've just looked at it and knowing that the key was correct. So it's thinking. So, and one thing you should note as well, when you see that, it means that Copilot is talking and sending out, it's printing. Let's use that word. It's printing things. So either giving you a response that's very long or writing things. So you don't want to click on this because it means that you're interrupting the message. As you can see, if you hover over it, it'll tell you that. Also, when it's stopped, it will go from this square to like a send icon. So that means you know that it's done. So far, so see, it's basically responding now saying, okay, that we need to make sure it's talking to the right API, which is a secondary problem, it seems. So problem one was that it could be had the wrong key, but we sent the key back and the key's fine. Problem two is that it could be talking to the wrong API because it's been hijacked by something else. I don't quite know what they mean by that, but let's just double check this is Python. Yep. I always make sure, because sometimes in the past I've been putting Python code in Bash and Bash code in Python, and then it just fails and it says wrong symbols or doesn't, accept it. So important to always keep that in mind. Click so you get the dark icon. Sometimes it doesn't copy. Need to do it again. Select is red. Okay. Doesn't seem to be. So, but I don't know why this is still processing because it does seem to have stopped. So we can pause that. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So, okay. Was 200 the last thing here? Yes, it was. Let's see. So let's copy this back. And we're not getting a request URL. So let's see what it says about that. Yeah, so essentially it's troubleshooting. It's thinking. I'm reading what it's saying as well just to figure out where. Okay, so it's asking me to print the key again. I feel like I'm tired of this broken record of printing keys. And it's just the same. So this is W said for RS. Okay, we're gonna need to navigate to Python and rather SendGrid to check that it's the same. So we're in SendGrid now. We only have one account. And we need to go to settings, check the API keys. This is not the actual API key itself. It's more of an ID. This is actually hidden. So we're gonna have to check when this was set up was the only time that you could see this. So I think I have to go and check my records now for where I saved this. In the meantime, let's see if we can edit the API key and see what it says. Okay, so this is not a sub user. This is a main account. So there's no issue here. Just double check that we're not. Let's check sub-user management just to make sure that we don't have a sub-user. Okay, yeah, so we're not a sub-user. This is a free plan. Okay, let's go to our records and just check this API key is correct. So we've checked and it is indeed correct. So it looks like that isn't the issue, but Copilot has asked to generate a fresh API key anyway. So let's do that. Create API key. So I think it's giving us a name actually. Mytenant for access. I'll call it something different just so that we don't forget the name. So that's good. We know that's actually quite useful as well because sometimes when there's an issue with the API key, this is a question of whether there's, you start to wonder if it has full access. So if you put full access in the name, at least you know that's what I'm doing. So I know. Okay, create and view. So the new key has been created. I didn't show you guys because it's sensitive information apparently, and they only show you once, so you can't even see it again. So I have to save it somewhere. So that's a new one that's created. Go back to Copilot. Okay, so now I need to change it in the project.mb. So at different points in time, we have used the API key in the code. So now we need to go and change it to make sure everything is now the new version of the API code, the new API code. So if we go back to, so that's our console. If you go to Python anywhere, you'll see it's in files. You'll have, wait, I'm going to just check what Copilot said, because sometimes you can change some of the Python, well, you can change the Python code through Bash via Python's programming language. But sometimes I just do it through this interface because it's a bit easier. This is just your directory. And the .nv file should be in here. Click on it to edit, or you can click the edit button. So I need to change this key. Just make sure it matches. Okay. So we've saved that, and now we need to go back and retest it. So now it's saying to go to Bash. So we need to come out of Python. You can do that by pressing Control. Oh no, that's not what we want to do. It needs to make sure it's clicked on. You can do that by pressing Control D. And now we're in Bash. You know you're in Bash when you have a $sign. Python has these arrows, 3 arrows, and Bash has a $sign. So just to copy this, press Enter. So that's, so now it's saying we should rerun the test. Okay. So it's not entirely clear if it means that we should do this or do that. Sometimes this happens. So let's go back to the SDK test. So we should get a 202 if this works, according to... I'm going to need to change this code. So I typically like to use Notepad++. To create, let me delete that. Notepad++ is helpful because it keeps the indentation. So what happens sometimes with Copilot is that it gives you code, and then you put it into your typical Notepad, which I do have open here, but then it messes up the indentation. And then what happens is that the code then fails because instead of having 3 spaces, it has 2, because when you copied and pasted it, it changed the format. So this is very good for programming because it keeps it intact from where you copy it from. So that's good. I'm just going to copy and paste that into here. So we're still getting a name error. So we're just going to copy this into, we're going to copy our code back and the output that it printed back into Copilot to see what it says. So now it's suggested that we come up with something, we do a different type of test. Also, sometimes it uses terms that I'm not familiar with. So I just use my phone to check. So for example, what is a JSON? I've seen that term used quite a lot. JavaScript object notation, lightweight data format used for storing and exchanging data between computers, programs, or web services. It's very common in APIs, web development, and data storage because it's easy for humans to read and easy for machines to parse. Okay. Let's ask it what it means by parse. I do understand what it means by parse, but just in case, I always like to make sure it's clear. And also, people who are watching who don't know. Read, analyze. Okay. So computers parse, I guess, and humans read. So it wants to know what JSON we're sending and what the API is returning. So it's giving us some Python code. Let's put it in there. Make sure it's red to show that you're selected. And then enter. So that is a lot of information, but it has asked us to tell us to print it. So sometimes with this thing, it doesn't allow you to get everything. So I just always try and remember what line I'm on. Control A, Control C, and then so before we print it, before we send it back, let's just see what it's looking for. Because what you want to be doing as well as part of this process is that you want to actually be building your knowledge up. Because it's very easy to just be like input, output, and be brain dead about it. Well, that's a bit of a autopilot, not applying your brain and not thinking very much. But the problem is that you're not building your knowledge and you're not going to be building your skills. So over time, what you want to happen is that you start to actually understand what it's telling you and why it's telling you what it's telling you. But the only way that you can do that is by investigating new terms when you don't understand them, and then also reading its rationale. Because sometimes its rationale doesn't actually make sense, especially if you're stuck on a wall and you've done different things. Because it could be saying, oh, well, it's the API key, but now we know it's not the API key because we've literally just changed the API key, created a new one. So if it said its rationales because the API key could be wrong, you could tell it, eliminate that issue. We know it's not wrong because we've changed it and we've addressed it many times. That's why it's important to actually read and stay in tune with what's going on. So I'm just going to read this now. So yes, I'm going to place that back. Now it's going to do some thinking. So it's saying now that it's not the API, but it's still sending out the JSON, which is basically the sentence that tells us what's going on. It's coming back saying there's an error. Permission denied, wrong credentials. Okay. So now it's asking us to verify the last 6 characters of the key, which we've done before. We're going to do that, put that in Python as usual. Okay, we're going to just verify that that's correct. It's correct, so that's not the issue. It's asking to generate another API key, which we're not going to do because it's already been changed. We're going to try this again. Let's come out of the bash of the Python. Sorry, not what I intend. Let's make sure. Okay, come out of the interactive console and paste this and see where it says. Well, it's come back saying it's accepted, so I don't know what that is about. Let's just send this into, put this into, and let's just, in the meantime, let's just figure out what this curl means, because I don't actually know. I'm just searching that now on my phone with my other Copilot on the phone. You could use, basically, you could move around. You could create another chat and check and have a chat where it basically just provides you a bit like encyclopedia of programming terminology, and you could just create that and use that chat just to ask questions. I don't do that because I don't like switching from the chat where I'm working from. And sometimes when you do that as well, if it crashes, you have to start all over again. So I just kind of keep it on this page, and then on my phone I use, or in another device, I then ask questions. It would be better if I had one particular channel, just one particular chat for all my programming questions and terminology questions, because then at least it would become, the idea is that it will become more specialized and know what I'm talking about. But I think the current setup is better for speed. So they're saying, so it's saying that it's basically short for client URL, and it's a way for you to transfer data to or from a server using protocols like HTTP, PPS. It's commonly used to test APIs. So that's interesting. We're testing this API using curl, but then when we tested it before, it wasn't working. So I need to figure out what the difference is on that. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to, let's see what Copilot is saying. We've already done this. We're not doing that again. This is why it's important to read it and know what you're doing, because it's asking you to print the API keys, but we literally just printed the API keys and we checked it's correct. So it's now saying to do, I guess, again. Do note that I did do this inside Mytenant, and that worked before. Okay, so we're getting 401 unauthorized, so that's something is likely not what the right answer is. So let's paste that in there. So what's happened here is that, okay, sometimes this happens because, again, so this actually needed to be the real key, which we didn't put in. So we're going to put that in and redo it. It's not always clear where you should actually replace the key, because sometimes it says SG API key, for example, SG SendGrid API key, and then you don't know if you need to actually put the API key there or it already is calling it from its database or its memory. But I think when you make that mistake and you send back the output, it tells you. So that's good. I'm going to go and find that key now. I'm going to copy and paste that into... I'm going to replace this here. Right, so it seems that we got the 202 code, which is accepted. That's great. Update. We've already updated this, so this is why I said you have to pay attention to what it's telling you to do. Now it's asking to reload the environment and start a clean Flask shell. Okay, which makes sense because that's Control D. You can always quite exit with a bracket, front bracket and back bracket, and the console would be closed. You can just go back to console, a fresh one. I'll just show you this for purposes anyway. Let's say this console environment loads. Just give it some time. Right, so let's say you get that, and then you're like, you want to go to another console or create another console. It shows it here as being kind of active. So you can keep it or you can close it. I usually close it if I'm not using it, just because I always think that the more things that you have open, the worse your performance is. And already my computer has loads of things open, so I try to at least keep this place a bit more organized. So we go to bash, new console, fresh shell, preparing. Right, so then we copy this, enter, says that. Again, it's asking us to run the same thing in Python, last 6 letters, which is correct, characters rather. It's asking me to execute this again. Fingers crossed this works. I think this is what was failing. Okay, so that is not working. The SDK send test is not working. So it's very possible. So basically, it's saying that it could be the .m file is not updated. So we did save that, but I just remembered that I didn't actually reload it. So what should happen is, this is the main code, this is the other code. What you can do is you go to web, sometimes it opens another tab, and then you need to reload it because it doesn't actually update. So it could be that we didn't update it. And that's why that's having an error. Anytime you change something in the files, you need to save it in the file, but then you need to reload the app. With the Python, there's usually, I don't know why, normally there's something here that says you can reload, but this changes to run for some reason, and I don't think that's the same thing. So I just always come here. We're learning together, so we're going to be figuring this out together. So let's go back to bash. Now I am going to close this console and restart it as a fresh and just Control D. and open a new one and do everything again, because we did everything new, but we hadn't reloaded the .mb. So maybe that's the issue. Okay, let's go back and do it all again. Let's start from scratch. And this is where, again, building your knowledge up as you read and kind of get to know what the issues are and understand is useful, because seeing this and having updated this and having had to reload a few times, I know that that could have been the issue. So we're going to go to clean shell. I don't know why it says bash pot. I never know why it says that, but anywho, we're in Python now. We just want to confirm it sees the correct. And then we want to copy this and make sure it tells us if we did have. So we're still getting a bad request here, which is really frustrating. I'm just going to copy all of that and send it back. So it seems the SDK is not working, but the curl is working, which is interesting. I don't know what that means. Hopefully it should be able to tell us. Okay, so it's asking us to copy and paste that, which we're going to do. Hopefully it prints something. Sometimes it doesn't print anything. It's not always clear to me. I'm trying to work out what is the... Okay, so at least I'm just reading to make sure that it understands that curl is working, but then the JSON is not working. So the JSON, if I'm not mistaken, is, we check this on the other AI tool. The JSON is just... what I need to find out, because we did check the meaning of JSON, but then we don't know how it interacts with the curl. So let's just figure out what the difference is. Because curl is a command line basic way of getting information from an application. But then what is a JSON? So are they the same thing? How are they used? How does a JSON... So we need to ask, what is the difference between a JSON and curl. Let's see that. Well, we're not completely stupid because it does say here this is a common point of confusion because they're both in web development, but they're complete different things. So JSON is a data format text used to represent structured data. Purpose is to store, exchange data between computers, apps, or APIs. Curl, command line tool, and library for sending or receiving data from a server. Purpose to make HTTP requests or FTP often to APIs. So I think they do the same thing. I think a JSON stores or exchanges data, and a curl makes requests. So it's said to think of it this way: the JSON is the message you want to send, and the mailman that delivers the message is the server, is the curl. Okay. So this has not printed anything. Oh, it has now. So let's copy that. Put it back in here. Good old friend. Tell us what's going on. I'm glad the curl is working though, because at one point neither of them were working. So we know that the curl has checked. The mailman has gone, has made the request, and it's told us it's working, but the message is not being sent correctly. So that's a problem. Need to get that fixed. I'm hoping that we can get this fixed today. I'll be really happy. So I'm just reading this. Okay. So now that we have a bit of understanding about what a curl is versus JSON, I think this really does help. So the system to make the request to see to, for example, to ask SendGrid to send an email is fine, but it's the what we're sending it doesn't understand. And I think that's because it's probably not in the right format. I'm just guessing. We'll see. So we'll see. I'm not quite sure how this is different from the what we sent before, but let's see. I don't know if we've copied. Probably not. Make sure this is blocked. Uh-oh. That does not seem to be copying, and I don't know why. Sometimes you just press like a little enter button and see if that... Okay, so maybe this is... Bash is not working. Okay, that sometimes happens. So it's working again. Okay, so I think it's written some stuff in here, which is... Okay. It does this sometimes, which is a bit annoying because you copy and paste the whole thing and then it doesn't work. Which is why you actually need to read the code as well. So I think we've sent this before, if I'm not mistaken. So I might ask it to please send raw code without instructions in it. Let's see if it understands. I think prompting wise, one does need to speak more clearly. I've always spoken to applications like they're humans. Like, please do this better, but it doesn't know what better means. So you have to be very clear. So it managed to understand that, which is good. So let's try again. So it's all the way down here. That did not work. Success. I'm just going to copy and paste this into here. So we can copy and paste the whole thing back. So control, put this back in here. Guys, we're unfortunately this stuck at this point. And sometimes this is what happens. Okay, well, it hasn't said anything. It's just giving us some new code, which I'm not happy about, but let's see. Let's see. Tell it, please see print response below, because I think maybe I've thrown it off its train of thought, having told it to make a change to its coding format. It's forgotten what it was doing in the first place and why it was doing that. So hopefully that will help rejig its memory. Let's see what it's saying. So I think it's thinking it might be pointing to the wrong URL. I don't know why that would be. One thing about it is that sometimes when you tell it not to do something, it corrects it in that particular step. but then it continues doing it later. So that can be a bit annoying. I think as the technology is upgraded, I think it will learn from your feedback much more easily. But let's see. So that's just giving the exact same error as far as I can see. I might copy paste this again actually, just to make sure. Yeah, that already even prints an error before you completely press full stop. Press enter rather. Let's see if this. The JSON is not working. If we're going around in circles like this, we might have to just tell it to like list out all the possible issues and assess which we have tried and which we have not tried. So it's not really telling me much what to do now, but when we see bash, we know that it means exit that console. So that's accepted. And then let's do that. Well, it says Python. So we're still in bash. So if you want to go to Python manually, you can just press that and then you see the arrow. Let's see what we get. Oh, that's worked. It seems we've gotten a 2OB and we've gotten success. Before we celebrate, however, let's check and send everything back. Print body. Send everything back. So print body. And then let's get everything back. Just to make sure, because sometimes with these things, you think it's working because you don't know what you're doing, but Okay, so it's working. It's asked us to go through some next steps. So we're going to take a pause on that, guys. And the next video, we're going to try and clean everything up, because I think a part of this process of trying to get it working, we've created a lot of mess. And so we're going to do that. But we're going to take a short break. Important to take breaks because it's quite an intense process. And what I found is that when I haven't taken breaks and I've pushed myself, I've either ended up running out of steam and just feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't anymore. Or I've continued on and I haven't made much progress. And I just think I spend 4 hours, 5 hours trying to fix something on here. I'm not successful. It's not effective. I'm not making any progress. That's 4 or 5 hours I could be doing something else. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing something productive. It just means I'm doing something else that is important too. So it could be doing things at home. It could be talking to someone, a family or friend. It could be spending time with loved ones. It could be exercising. So important to take breaks. And I treat these as kind of like sessions. They're not always an hour. Sometimes they're at 2, 3. But for now, because we've hit a really good milestone, I'm going to take a break to celebrate the success of this. All right. See you guys soon.